And now we have Gobbydemic. This was the fastest Lumion for a long time until Gargolem's speed came around, which aroused notoriety out of it. It also has interesting design origins, with its face being reminiscent of a Plague Doctor, and in a much more cool way than the other Plague Doctor based Pokemon. Does this superiority shoot Gobbydemic into stardom in the metagame, or does its minuscule stature make it frail and feeble? We will find out as we ask, how good was Gobbydemic actually? There was a time when Gobbydemic was considered the most annoying Lumion in the entire game. Its speed stat was uncontested, and its qualities were relatively unique. Hypnotize has been a hallmark of Lumion legacy hatred, and Gobbydemic may as well be the poster child of this. Its speed meant that everything would be put to sleep if landed, and if the opponent dared switch, then it had 2 shots to land Hypnotize. This made Gobbydemic quite the luck fisher, and this allowed it to garner the honorary title of most annoying. Gobbydemic wasn't solely reliant on Hypnotize either. Muk Blast was very spammable when it was introduced, and Poison Barbs made it a premier hazard setter, though it didn't receive Poison Barbs until later. It could even take advantage of its own Poison Barbs through the Baneful ability, strengthening its power, though Immunize was preferred so the enemy Hypnotized Gobbydemic would not ruin it, nor could El Iguana tase it to ruin its speed. Fast Provoke was also incredibly useful in shutting down anyone thinking they could set up on Gobbydemic's relatively weak 88 range attack, and that same low range attack and Muk Blast's spammability over power meant that Gobbydemic was much better as a late game cleaner if it wasn't a Poison Barb's Hypnotize lead, as when the chips are down, Muk Blast and the highest speed stat in the game meant that Gobbydemic would often clean house. Gobbydemic was common enough that it would actually run very nimble fairly often despite not needing it for anything besides enemy Gobbydemic, just to get the jump on them with Provoke. I mentioned the Poison Barbs lead set, which again did not come around until Poison Barbs came around to Gobbydemic, and that would use Provoke, Hypnotize, and of course its trademark Muk Blast, making it the perfect suicide lead. It also had the option of offensive sets with either Immunized or Baneful, and its array of coverage from Air Blade to Trip Brute, rounded out by a move of your choice, be it the dishonorable Hypnotize, the always usable Provoke, or the potentially devastating Poison Barbs. Sephirite City introduced a bevy of new threats, specifically Diborg and Stratosaur being hard walls. This made offensive Gobbydemic much less viable, pigeonholing it into an annoying Hypnotize fisher. However, Gobbydemic had the ultimate niche of outrunning Protogon, one of the most dangerous new Lumions, and being able to revenge kill it with a toxic essence boost of Muk Blast, as well as other speedy newcomers like Garbantis and Hunder, with Garbantis being weak to Gobbydemic's accompanying Airblade coverage. And the new Tyrex could not wall it either, as Trip Brute would do significant damage. Route 8 and the UMV update actually increased Gobbydemic's stock in OU, since it matched up well against every new Lumion except Meditoad, whose high bulk and immunity to Hypnotize made it an amazing counter to Gobbydemic in a vacuum. However, it never wanted to actually switch in, as Muk Blast, Poison, or even just chip damage or Poison Barbs could utterly ruin Meditoad's delicate HP. It handled Malamurk, Skellic, Deladrix, Whippledrift, and everything in between. The update that truly shifted Gobbydemic's role was the Beach update. The aforementioned Poison Barbs, as well as the introduction of Lumello and the move Barbs, made it so that Gobbydemic could be OU's premier suicide lead. It already held somewhat of a niche like this beforehand, but now it could accompany it with Poison Barbs and Barbs that would damage most Lumions upon switching, and with its existing utility, made it an amazing suicide lead. This update also brought along plenty of water types for Gobbydemic to feast on too, in Kanabo, Samarine, the aforementioned Lumello, and Tsukame. And with existing waters like Luminami, Ventation, and Garlash still being prevalent meta threats, Gobbydemic could do damage while setting Barbs up. The only negative impact of the Beach update was the introduction of Snack Goop, my favorite Lumion, that also had more power than Gobbydemic as well as a secondary stab and jet stream. However, it locked Gobbydemic's speed and utility, meaning that one did not outclass the other. They simply fit on different teams. Snagoop would be a wall breaker, and Gobbydemic would be a suicide lead. Atlantean City and subsequent updates did not shake the metagame up too much for Gobbydemic, apart from the introduction of specialty boots, meaning Gobbydemic could actually be outsped. But as a suicide lead, this did not mean too much to it. Hello, this is Editing Terrazzo, and I just want to say that the Clutch plushie also helped Gobbydemic's efficacy as a suicide lead. However, Gobbydemic did slowly start to fade away from the metagame. Why so? Was it stronger and faster Lumions being introduced? Not really. It was the absolute flooding of hazard removal. Burn Up, Mudslide, Tear Down, and Gust were all capable of dispatching the barbs that Gobbydemic's whole identity in OU, as Hypnotize became more and more resented as time went on. And these moves exploded in popularity around 2022, with Pyrolin, Chartiki, LFH, Phasenon, and even Eruptodon being capable of removing the source of Gobbydemic's offensive pressure. The Hyper Offense team that anchored also faded from serious tournament play in favor of semi-stall teams. Fiskarna's introduction did not help at all, as it had both Regive and Mudslide, making barbs utterly impossible to get up, as well as often donning a very clever set in order to counteract super effective Muck Blast, though thankfully that same Muck Blast weakness meant that it wasn't super easy to handle Gobbydemic. And actually, in one certain tournament, Gobbydemic had the fun of not blowing it away with a noxious Shell boosted Muck Blast, resulting in a 5-0 victory for its player. On the 29th of October that year though, Gobbydemic's biggest rival came along. Every Gargolem form utterly ruined it. From attacks raw power and specialty was letting it outrun Gobbydemic, to Gargolem defense being utterly impenetrable and being able to sponge Trip Root and can use Gobbydemic as an opportunity to phase Gobbydemic's team around, to Gargolem speed completely taking over Gobbydemic's role as a suicide lead, thanks to even higher speed outrunning boots users like Deludrix and Borok while having icicle traps and a bloody mudslide immunity. However, even though Gobbydemic was utterly outclassed, its existing role still appealed to many players oblivious to Gargolem's speed, and thus it never dropped to UU. Gobbydemic could only function as a baneful abuser at this point, but Poison Barb's teams were too inconsistent to be a consistent metagame force, and baneful Gobbydemic was nearly non-existent. All Gobbydemic had over Gargolem's speed was Hypnotize, which was inconsistent, Poison Barbs, which were inconsistent, and the ability to damage Fiskarna. Granted, this stored advantage was not insignificant, but it was better to try and overwhelm Fiskarna in exchange of an overall superior Lumion and Gargolem's speed than to use Gobbydemic. Gobbydemic's fall was drastic, and it might seem like hyperbole, but it really did fall off in viability. Atlantean City Part 2 increased the power level further with Soul Burst and new Dokomori, making it difficult for Gobbydemic to get anything done, especially because Dokomori was one of the most prevalent Lumions in the metagame to this day. And to this day, Gobbydemic is in a similar spot to that fateful day when Gargolem came out. More water types at least gave it more targets, right? I do want to mention, however, that Gobbydemic at some point gained access to enchantments, making it a dual screen setter, but for some reason it did not reclaim its position or even use these moves at all. It probably had something to do with Cleone's dominance as well as Dyborg, but other than that, all I can imagine is the Hyper Offense is dead as ever. Maybe when the Light Clay is added, Gobbydemic can finally fight for a spot as a suicide lead over Gargolem's speed, and Hyper Offense can rise. So how good was Gobbydemic actually? It was an absolute star in its inaugural phase, a nuisance few could deny, spamming Hypnotize to high heaven and spreading poison with Muck Blast as consistently as anything, and its speed tier being unmatched. Barbs only made it better as did the abundance of water types, but sadly when the Gargolems came around and reshaped the metagame in their image, it couldn't last, and today it still sees use, but only by players looking to snipe a Fiskarna or have latched onto it for so long that ditching it feels wrong. Effectively, it's a severe downfall, but at least it's still OU, I guess. Thanks for watching and let us know, do you think Gobbydemic is good? What Lumion should we cover next? Because we're always able to cover more.